I'm Justin Birnbaum, a staff writer here at Forbes. Joining me today is Susie Wolff, Managing Director of F1 Academy. Susie, thanks for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
So we're in the third year of F1 Academy. The season finale is coming up. It's going to be held at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I'm curious, putting an event like that alongside one of the sport's marquee races, what does that do to elevate F1 Academy?
Thank you to the team at Las Vegas, the CEO, Emily Prazer, for making it all possible. And one thing's for sure, we're not just racing there. We are going to light up Las Vegas. We've got a merch collection with Hello Kitty dropping. We've obviously got a huge title fight between Dorian Pain and Maya Bouk, Ferrari against Mercedes. So it's going to be a big weekend for us.
What's kind of the broader expectation coming out of that weekend? What do you see coming out of there that kind of builds momentum going into the next season?
Well, I think long term with F1 Academy, we know change takes time, and we always wanted to build a very strong foundation that year on year would solidify and just create more and more momentum. We're bold, we're big with our visions, but we're only in year 3, so we're still very much like a young startup. It's about optimizing the calendar, making sure we're reaching new audiences, that we're speaking to that very young female demographic that now is such a big fan of Formula One, and creating opportunity in the sport so that we see female talent both on and off track being given opportunity.
F1 Academy has secured major consumer brands like Charlotte Tilbury, American Express, and Tommy Hilfiger. So I'm curious, for an all-female single-make racing series, what kind of unique value proposition does that offer?
Well, we didn't just want to be a diversifying project that everyone could tick a box with. It was really about creating positive and impactful change in the sport. Very grateful for the partners that came on board, because when I presented to them, it was just a vision. I didn't have the data, I didn't have the eyeballs, I didn't have the business case that could warrant them coming in to support F1 Academy. But some of them were in the sport already and said, we absolutely want to help you build. We want to come on this journey with you because we see how important this can be for the future of the sport.
So how does the sponsorship inventory or the partners you kind of are after or generally deal with, how does that differ than the broader general kind of typical, usual suspects of Formula One?
Well, I think at the core of all of our partnerships is an authenticity to help us build and grow F1 Academy. There's nobody there that's just ticking a box to say, okay, we're in F1, we better help F1 Academy. All of them have come on board because they see how much momentum women's sports have. They see how the fan base is growing. They see the potential of the future mid to long term. So these partners have really come on strategically to help us in the long term build something, and to be proud to see the change that they've helped forge alongside us in the sport. But I think initially it was important to get brands that have never been in the sport before, because we want to disrupt. We want to do things differently. We want to challenge the perceptions that it's a man's world, that the old dated stereotypes of female drivers, well, they don't exist anymore. And there's so much female talent out there that the sport, in a way, is really developing alongside the new partnerships that we're bringing in.
We're obviously at a time where women's sports are really booming. I mean, here in the U.S., we've seen, whether it's the National Women's Soccer League or the WNBA, valuations are booming. From a motorsports perspective, I'm wondering if you can kind of elaborate on that momentum and how that's been growing. What kind of new audiences are you finding with that? Is it really kind of opening the gates here?
Well, Formula One, we can be so grateful where the sport is right now. It's got an incredible global fan base. It keeps growing year on year. What's incredible is that now 42% of the global fan base is female, the fastest growing fan demographic, the 18 to 24-year-old female. So we're really lucky to have that young female skewed audience. And I think real credit to Formula One, because they thought up of F1 Academy and they put the investment behind it. They knew they wanted to speak to that new audience and make sure that in the long term, the sport became more diversified. And when I went out and looked for support from within the paddock, within the sport, I got it, which I think shows how much the sport as a whole wants to see this positive change.
You touched on this a little bit. I've spoken with several other female owners in other sports, owners in the women's sports space. And many of them have said to me, we are investing in this industry because this is a business. This is going to make a lot of money. There's a ton of growth to tap here. And that extends on the sponsorship side too. In a lot of cases, teams want to work with sponsors who don't see this as, okay, we want to, be perceived well or, make a diversity play of sorts. We want to do this because we know this is a great business opportunity for us. How do you ensure that the partners that you're working with see it similarly, that this is not just, we want to broaden the ecosystem, but this is a great business opportunity and you can kind of build a long-term business out of that?
Well, I think financial sustainability is at the core of what we have to build up over time, but it takes time. And I've been incredibly lucky to get the full support and investment of F1 and obviously the owners of the sport, Liberty. And that's given us a very strong foundation to go out to partners and say, we would love you to come on this journey with us, but we're not desperate. That means we're not forced to sign any partner that we can. I can tell on even the first discussion at a table if a brand really wants to come on board with us and build a true partnership, or whether it's just a box ticking exercise. And in the end, to build F1 Academy to what we believe it can be, we need the right partners on board with us. We need to reach new audiences. We need to make sure that the brands are talking about their involvement in F1 Academy. So that's been quite an easy process to understand who really wants to come on board and who doesn't. And I've been in the wonderful position when I've realized that it's possibly just a box ticking exercise. It's been a great conversation, but let's not take this conversation any further, because we have that strategy in place to say, well, what are we doing to build this, not just now in the short term, but in the mid to long term? And I agree with many of the other women's sports owners. There's huge potential within this sport. It's got to be done in the correct way, because when something's shiny and new like F1 Academy, it can create hype, it can create buzz, but it's sustaining that momentum and building on it year on year.
You articulate kind of what you're looking for in partners there, what you want out of them. On the other side of the coin, when you do agree with someone, what is your expectation for how they work with you? What is your expectation for their side of the relationship? What are they going to do? How much effort are they going to put into it? And kind of what are the kind of responsibilities that you kind of see when you want to be? Because obviously the partnership is a two-way street.
It definitely is. And we never try to, oversell and underdeliver. I like to do the opposite. Let me prove to you what we can deliver with F1 Academy. We're very lucky that we're one of the very few global sports in the world. So we hit 3 different continents. So it's really up to the partner to use those different regions in whatever way fits that region to really bring it to life. With my brilliant partnerships team, what activations are we doing either on the ground or digitally to reach that wider audience, to tell those authentic stories from within the sport? But how lucky am I? We're only in our 3rd year, but F1 Academy doesn't need to fill a stadium, doesn't need to build a fan base. We get to race on one of the biggest sporting platforms in the world. So when we take to the grid, the grandstands are already full. We have nearly all the broadcasters of F1 showing F1 Academy. We have our own Netflix series. From a very early stage, we were able to deliver quite high numbers in terms of data, because these brands, as much as they're willing to come on board with the journey, there needs to be a return on investment. They need to see that actually they're reaching the audiences and it's working for them as a partnership. And that's something I always want to deliver for the partners.
While you do get to leverage kind of the grand stage of Formula One, which undoubtedly, brings a ton of eyeballs and interests, how do you then, outside of that, when you necessarily can't leverage, kind of the broader Formula One ecosystem, like how do you make F1 Academy a standalone product too, in addition to kind of being a product that complements the F1 ecosystem very nicely?
Well, we offer very different assets. So our paddock is open to the fans. You don't need that special golden pass to get into the paddock. Anyone can walk up and see a young girl putting on a Ferrari race suit and jumping in what looks like a miniature Formula One car. We also make sure that our partners are able to activate around F1 Academy, because obviously it's slightly easier than F1, who have the 10 Formula One teams to work with. Some of our partners have a whole livery to design. Tommy Hilfiger isn't just a logo on a car of an F1 team. He has the whole livery to design. He has a driver with a Tommy Hilfiger suit. So it really means the asset is very different to what they're used to having in Formula One. And that means they can bring the partnership to life in what is a very new and novel way.
So kind of switching gears a little bit here, beyond being an on-the-track pipeline for female drivers, I'm curious how F1 Academy supports women in STEM and, helping drive them pursue careers in motorsports and the broader F1 ecosystem, or even engineering in general.
Well, being in motorsport, we love data. And unfortunately for me, it's very difficult to find out what data we actually have of being successful in terms of changing perceptions, in terms of a young woman in the middle of the US or the UK or Germany choosing to study engineering at university because she loves F1. That's something I cannot obviously gather and hold, but we do hear the success stories. And for us, F1 Academy is not just about getting a female driver on the F1 grid. If we do our job well, that will be inevitable.
I don't want to put you on the spot. You mentioned success stories. Do any come to mind in terms of any that you can kind of think of on the spot?
Definitely. I mean, an outstanding one for me last season, I was walking through the paddock and a young lady was shouting my name, and I stopped and she said, I just had to speak to you because I want you to know that it's because of you and F1 Academy that I'm standing in this paddock. And there are success stories of young women who have chosen to either change their career paths or pursue a path in motorsport. And the amount of messages we get also from young students saying, how can I get into this sport? I think it shows that over time, you will see more and more young, talented women entering the sport, not just on track, but also off track.
In the collection of motorsports fans globally, obviously, there are those who will consume every type of racing product, and there's those who, will watch one race, this race, or that race. How do you ensure F1 Academy claims its fair share of eyeballs over the long term? I mean, it's a big question. It's a lot to think about, obviously, but you get to leverage these broader platforms, but in a way, you also compete against them because you are a similar product. It complements, but at the end of the day, there are fans who will watch everything, and there are fans who only watch one or two races. So, how do you make sure F1 Academy claims the eyeballs it needs to grow?
That's a great question. Obviously, not just an F1 weekend, but there's so much content out there these days that we need to make sure that we're compelling for fans, that we're creating great racing to watch, that the content that we're putting up on socially is compelling enough for them to watch. And I don't take that lightly. I don't expect people to watch just because it's called F1 Academy and it's female drivers. It needs to be great entertainment to watch. We need to have exciting races. We need to have big battles. We need to have rivalries. We need to create a show before the race and make sure our podium ceremony has the buzz that a Formula One does. And that won't happen overnight, but we've seen some incredible racing this year. We obviously have a title fight, Ferrari against Mercedes going into Las Vegas finale. So we're on a pretty good way, but we have to earn our fans, and we need to do that by just creating a spectacle for them to watch.
What do you think F1 and by association F1 Academy need to do the most to keep growing? Because obviously the growth over the last few years has been incredible, but to keep that momentum going, to meet an evolving fan base, what is probably the top priority, you think?
For me, the top priority is ensuring that there's great racing to watch. People need to be entertained when they switch the television on. There's no point in there being a big show without there being the authenticity of brilliant racing at the heart of it. It's the fastest racing cars in the world. Those racing drivers, the speeds they go now, how close it is in qualifying, they're having to put everything on the line to get a great position either in qualifying or a race. So it really is the best drivers in the world with the fastest machinery in the world, some of the biggest brands in the world, going head to head for what is the biggest prize in motorsport. And that will always be at the core of what F1 needs to be. And like I said, with F1 Academy, we need to be a spectacle. And I think as long as the entertainment side, where it's great racing, if there's a big rivalry, it always helps. We're looking at a title this year that might go down to the wire in Abu Dhabi. And that's something which I think people will just keep tuning into, and more people will hear of these great races, these great rivalries, and be interested to watch.
Before I let you go, is there anything else on F1 Academy that I've missed along the way here? Any point we didn't hit on? Anything that people need to know about F1 Academy?
I think the fact that F1 Academy exists, because not everyone realizes that yet, we're gaining an incredible amount of momentum, and there's some exciting announcements coming, not just in Las Vegas, but also next year. So watch this space. We've got even bigger visions than you see right now.
Susie, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me.